As a warning for anyone who may be sensitive to certain topics, I would recommend that you click away from the video now. There's a cute little picture here that shows Pixie seeing Brutus, saying, "Hey Brutus, I've been looking for you all day." And, Brutus says, "Sorry, I was visiting an old friend of mine." "Yeah, where is she? I don't see anyone here." And then he's like, "Heh, it's raining." It's like, "Haha, let's go home. It's starting to rain." And it's like, "Huh? It's not raining." And he's like, "No, it's raining." And pretty much what the backstory is that he lost his owner, his best buddy, in war due to I believe it was a IED that took him out. And unfortunately, Brutus deals with PTSD from that. And he is a military service dog. And unfortunately, he never really recovered from it. So there are times where he is visiting, the grave of his owner in the, pretty much in the memorial military cemetery thing. And, yeah, it's very unfortunate. And, pretty much, Edinstvo came into a situation much like this. It is a sweet story, but it is a sad story. Just showing how far he's willing to go for his empire and his people. There are many times where Edinstvo sits there on the bridge of a ship, or even in the observation room, silently staring into the deepness of space, with soulful and sad eyes. Even though his demeanor is stoic, and his muscular form is ever present, inside of the great wolf is unparalleled agony and lament as he remembers his dearest friends who have fallen in battle and sacrificed their lives, not only for him, but for the Empire. One of his closest friends flew his ship into the path of a superweapon that was meant to wipe out Edinstvo's capital flagship that was undergoing system upgrades and shield upgrades. This included having the armor disassembled and the ship being reconfigured. This superweapon was coming in at 35% the speed of light, and the friend had only a few seconds to react. His last words that were spoken before the eruption of the weapon were, "Edinstvo, my friend." On the day that his death comes around, each year, the great wolf sits there silently for hours at a time, riddled with agony and lament, as his body, although still and fortress-like, trembles like the earth in the wake of an asteroid hit. Sufti has even reported that when she gently places her large paw on him to reassure him and to let him know that she is there, she sees that his body is cold and is trembling out of unfathomable grief. There was another time where he was sitting underneath a beautiful tree in the memorial grounds of the Hall of Heroism and Valor. And this is on the capital planet of the Empire. Because the heroes that do who help save Edinstvo's life or step in to help the Empire and die are put, in the highest, grounds of, memorial. And this was where a child who was innocent and sweet saw her hero sitting there under the tree, oblivious to the fact that he was suffering greatly. It was supposed to be a female, a little girl, but yeah, sorry about that. Edinstvo had recently undergone some massive bodily reconstitution treatments to help integrate biotechnic components to replace the old and outdated technology. Unfortunately, these procedures had left the great wolf weak, exhausted, and fatigued. So, much like Pixie did to Brutus, the kind and sweet female child ran up to the great wolf and stood next to him with a heart full of happiness, being able to see her hero and the great leader of the Astral Empire. She sat down next to him and looked up at him with a great smile on her face, and gently reached out and touched his arm. She asked him what he was doing there, and wondered who he was visiting. She was still in the learning stages of memorials and the meaning of death, so it was still a very new concept to her, and she had trouble putting two and two together. Edinstvo, not wanting to disappoint, despite being overcome with overwhelming grief and lament and agony, answered her questions. His voice was low, and he spoke slowly. This, however, did not seem to faze the sweet little girl, as her little tail wagged happily, being able to have a chat with her hero. After a couple minutes of talking, the great wolf knew that his time there was up, for the moment, because he had to go back for more treatment. So he made the same excuse that Brutus did, and told her that it was time for them to go back to their home, because it was starting to rain. The little girl was smart, and looked around and only saw clouds in the distance, but saw no rainfall. She tilted her head curiously, and said that she saw no rain. The great wolf, barely keeping himself together, and doing everything he could not to start weeping, looked at her with a kind and sad eyes, and said, "Trust me, little one, it is raining." Tears were running down his face as he said this, and this alerted the child that he was doing terribly. So, with the kind and sweet innocence of her heart, and the loving nature of her, the little girl hugged the great wolf's face, and gave him a little smooch on the forehead, using her little paws to try to wipe away the tears. Edinstvo started to tremble, doing everything he could to keep himself from breaking down. He managed to temporarily stop the tears, to give the girl a sense of accomplishment, and helping comfort somebody who was not doing well. The great wolf gently gave the child a few licks, and a special Astral 7 token. So remember, he's a giant wolf, and the way that a wolf shows affection is that they gently lick somebody. So, yeah. It's not a few licks like a spanking. It's, gentle, affectionate licks because, he's a big fluffy wolf. After this, he sent her on her way to the waiting arms of her parents, who knew what was going on and were speechless and afraid to offend the great leader. After the child had rejoined her parents with a heart full of happiness, being able to comfort somebody who was not feeling well, and having a newfound treasure, she and her family and her parents left silently as they returned to her home with a story to tell. After this, the great wolf collapsed to the ground, covering his face with his paws, and started weeping bitterly. His entire body trembled as it felt like he was being ripped apart from the inside out. Horrible flashbacks of seeing his friend's ship erupt into an apocalyptic explosion bulldozed through the poor wolf's mind. The great wolf finally broke, and was a trembling mess on the ground, sitting in front of the grave and statue of his dearest friend that had sacrificed his life to save his and to save the flagship. Stufty and Schmango, his little pet, ran to him and offered what little comfort they could, as they used their bodies to cover him, to provide him some level of comfort. Remember, Stufty is about 20% larger than Edinstvo, and that is quite a size, since Edinstvo is supposed to be pretty much the largest creature in the Empire. And she is an absolutely stunning white-furred eastern dragon-like creature. Her entire body is covered by thick and beautiful fur, and submerged underneath the thick fur is extremely thick layers of pure muscle and power. Much like Drugeriu in Timeline 3, she has, for her skin, special fur-lined feathers. Fur-lined scales. And then those scales themselves also sprout thick layers of fur. So it's kind of a double defense to, keep her, beautiful and soft while also being tough. So, she used her long body to snuggle around the great wolf, doing everything she could to offer what little comfort she could. Schmango, a weird wolf-goat hybrid creature, gently licked the great wolf's face, trying to lick up the tears as fast as they were coming out. Edinstvo eventually cried himself to sleep, out of pure exhaustion. The private medical ship of Edinstvo hovered out of view, waiting patiently for Edinstvo to gather enough strength to go through another series of agonizing enhancements and reconstitutions to make his body more stable and effective. Even to this day, Edinstvo still suffers severe episodes of depression and instability. Despite him being relatively stable and in a much better state, better than he has ever been, he unfortunately still carries the scars of seeing his friends and people die in order to protect him and the Empire. Incredible research because of Edinstvo's situation has been done to help others with CPTSD and instability and psychosis. Because of this, the lives of millions of soldiers throughout the Empire can be enriched with treatments to help better their everyday lives and give them help when times of crisis strike. Through the agonies and torments of the Great Wolf, many lives are able to be enriched because of it, and they are very grateful for all the leader has done to help them to get them to this point. Edinstvo now has mood stabilizers that work within seconds and last a couple hours or at least until the time of crisis passes. This allows for no long-term effects and makes these periods of psychosis and fits of PTSD and much more manageable and much less destructive and dangerous. Autocorrect really butchers these stories. There is hope on the horizon, though, but unfortunately to get there, more blood will have to be spilled, and more lives will have to be lost. The Great War is far from over.